Alright, so ladies and gentlemen, who knows what this footage is? Put in the comments if you know what this footage is. We've seen several days, in fact 3 days in a row of very, very large protests comprising of multiple thousands of people hitting the streets of Melbourne, primarily made up of people from the construction industry, but as the days go on, we see more and more people from the broader community joining in. Now today it seemed that the protest was very, very much largely diminished, or it appeared to be non-existent apart from a few small groups that made it into the city, and that could be due to a few reasons. It could be due to fatigue, or it could be due to some of the events yesterday, which I suspect were very traumatic. That's right, we saw the Special Operations Group from Victoria Police deployed to the streets to counter the protesters, and we're going to take a look into Special Operations Group because it could be the first time that some people are hearing about SOG, or referred to as SOG. This is a group that has been primarily used for counter-terrorism and threats of an extreme magnitude, not a group that we ever thought would be deployed to the streets of Melbourne to deal with unarmed protesters, but we're going to get into that. So it's been a crazy week, hasn't it, ladies and gentlemen? Who here has been to the city over the past few days? We saw it really kick off on Monday, of course, out front of the CFMEU office, with the scenes there with John Setka not addressing the people in the way in which they wanted to be addressed, not coming up with the answers that thousands of people from the construction industry were seeking. The biggest question I was able to ascertain based on speaking to people on the ground as I went and I covered the events there was, well, given the huge power and reach of the union, why had the union not done more to stand up for the bodily integrity of the workers, or specifically workers' right to choose whether or not they want to participate in a certain medical procedure? Okay, now John Setka came out and said, hey, it's not my decision, it's the decision of the government. All right, well, that may be true and that may be accurate. But the question I posed to many of the workers who were there protesting was that, well, considering the capability of the union to put on huge protests and strikes, and we've seen massive protests over topics such as workers' wages, hours, conditions, things like that, why did the union not organise a massive protest or strike in relation to mandatory vaccinations? Why did they just roll over? This is a question that I don't have the answer to, and that's why I'm asking you at home, because maybe you've got the answer. If you do, go ahead and put it in the comments. So what we've seen this week is we've really seen an escalation of police tactics. That's right. So starting from Monday, of course, the group was basically left alone for a long time by Victoria Police, which I found kind of interesting, considering that just a couple of days ago on the weekend, we saw Victoria Police getting very heavy-handed, smashing elderly women into the ground and that sort of thing, and they seem to be responding a little bit differently when dealing with, a few thousand construction workers who happen to be mostly male, who happen to be very physically strong and capable individuals. Funny how Victoria Police can act a little bit differently in that type of scenario. But of course, as things escalated, we saw public order response roll into the streets. But we've actually seen something in recent days that we haven't seen before, which is Special Operations Group deployed to the streets of Melbourne to handle protesters. Now, I wasn't completely sure if this would happen. I had my suspicions that maybe SOG would be used for this purpose, but I was really hoping that they wouldn't. I was hoping that if they were asked, then maybe the leader of SOG would turn around and say, no, we're not going to go and deal with protesters. We deal with terrorists. But unfortunately, I think that protesters are being thrown into the same category as terrorists, which is very, very concerning for many people. So let's have a bit of a look here. So what we've seen is that Victoria Police has increased the use of extreme force. That's right. So I've got a compilation here that of clips that I've taken from the past few days. They're not all footage from me. It's footage from a lot of independent journalists on the ground. You may recognize some of the footage from Rukshan and some of your other favorite people that engage in live streaming. So I'm going to play this for you right now. Featured in this compilation that goes for about 8 minutes, you'll see Victoria Police, as in general duties officers. You'll see public order response, and you'll also see Special Operations Group. So I'm going to play this for you right now, and it's just a bit of a mishmash of a lot of instances that we've seen over the past few days. Viewer discretion is advised. I just want to say that this footage could most definitely be very disturbing to some people. There's also a lot of swearing in some of these clips, so if you're offended by swearing and strong language, maybe you want to turn it off. All right, that's my disclaimer. I'm going to play it for you right now.
These are insane scenes, ladies and gentlemen. The world needs to see what the fake news will not.
They're on the ground! They're on the ground! They're on the ground! On the ground! Easy, easy, easy. Boys, easy. Arm on the back. Oh, right, get the eye gouging now. Arm on the back. I ain't fucking resisting. You fucking eye gouged me, you fucking dog. You fucking eye gouged me. You fucking eye gouged me. Please. What the fuck is wrong with you guys? You guys are fucked! You are fucked! What the fuck is this? What the fuck is that? Shooting fucking innocent people! For fucking reason! Why are you aiming that fucking thing at me? What is wrong with you? Why? What real?
No offense, guys, but you fucking after you don't even report the fucking story anyway, so you can get fucked. That's just to the people that don't report the story. Everyone else I don't have a problem with.
Oh, shit.
He's on. Fucking pig! Fuck off, you pig!
Fuck you!
United, go! We gotta stay together, United. Come on! No worries, legend. Thanks, boys. That's it. You guys are the people, man.
Epic standoff. Peaceful protesters not being violent. The police are unsure what to do.
This is fucking Australia! to go around the back, guys. Far out.
They're throwing stuff now, and okay, they're shooting. They're now shooting. They're now shooting people. You can hear the, oh my god! They're just shooting at everyone now. They're shooting again. They're going through the trees and everything. All the bullets you can hear, like just flying through the trees, and the whizzing sound of it going through the air. And you can see.
Oh my god! Oh my god! Oh my god! Oh my god! Oh my god!
Wasn't I just nice to you before and said you could go to your house?
What sort of gun is that?
I do. You've had enough of this as much as you do, Pat. Just go home. Alright? Otherwise,
If you've had enough as much as us, why are you still enforcing it, boys?
We have to.
No, you don't have to.
This is what. Listen, we're not here to argue with you, unless go home. Otherwise, they start issuing tickets.
Bro.
We don't want to do it, but we will do it. Right?
Well, if you don't want to do
Head
it, don't
home.
do it. Stand up for what you believe in rather than paycheck.
just go home, alright? We get paid to do this, mate. I'm just as over this fucking protest as you are. By protest, I mean lockdown, alright?
Fair enough,
unfortunately,
mate. Fair enough.
I got to do what I got to do. And
You
that's
don't,
why I'm
you
here
don't have
trying
to
to
do
talk
that.
to you.
You don't have to do that. You're choosing to do it for
I'm
a
not
paycheck.
skilled to do anything else, mate. So unfortunately,
Mate,
at this time of my life,
Wait,
that's what I have to
and
do.
the people of us that aren't skilled, we don't get paid. We're not getting food at the moment.
I hear you, mate. My wife's in the same position. She's out of a job at the moment as well. I understand you're being pissed off about it, but there's a way to go about it, that's all. And unfortunately,
I feel
punching on with coppers isn't it, mate.
I respect that. And
Yeah.
I feel like it's like an animal's backed into a corner. We don't want anything. We don't want to attack. We don't want any of this. But
You
keep
might not,
pushing
mate.
us.
You might not.
You keep pushing us, and that's where we're all at. We don't want to do this, but we're having to do this because we cannot see our families. People are killing themselves. None of this has to do with health. What health has to do with is exercise, fruit in the sun, not injections. Okay? Mental health affects physical health. You're locking us indoors. People are killing themselves. It's not to do with
I
health.
don't have time to get in a debate about it.
I know, because you need a paycheck. It doesn't matter what I say, because you're getting paid at the end of the day and you've got guns.
Look, at the end of the day, I agree with you.
Then why are you standing on this side and not with us?
Because that's what I get paid to do.
So you agree with me, but you get paid to do that, so you stand on that
Which is
side.
why I'm trying to talk to you the way I'm talking to you, as opposed
Exactly,
to...
because it's not, you're doing what you're getting paid to do, not what you stand in, and that's why I disrespect you.
That's fine, and I'm still asking you to go home, please.
Yeah, get your paycheck so you and your wife can eat. We won't, but you can eat, so...
Bro, we're not going home. We're just walking.
I know, we're not going home, we're not listening to your orders anymore.
So, mate, I'm just letting you know, we come back again, you're all going to be arrested.
Yeah, that's fine, mate. We don't, if you can't tell, we're not afraid anymore.
All right, so ladies and gentlemen, a few questions for you. The question is, where do we go from here? When it comes to Victoria Police, SOG is as high as it gets in relation to units that are capable of responding to extremely volatile situations. Now, a lot of us really welcomed the idea of SOG many years back. Many of us were concerned about terrorism, thinking that SOG would be reserved specifically for incidences where there was some type of terror threat or some other huge domestic threat to life, that SOG would step in and have our best interests at heart. And now, of course, we see them deployed to the streets of Melbourne. So here's a few questions. Where do we go from SOG, okay? We figured that the police was content to use public order response when dealing with protesters, but Victoria Police have clearly demonstrated that they're willing to go all the way to the top. So my question is, where does it go from here? Are we going to see live rounds of ammunition used on unarmed protesters? And I don't think that's a crazy question. Did you see that militarized vehicle out there. The types of weapons that SOG uses, very different from the weapons used by public order response. Are we going to see ADF on the street? What is the Australian government going to call on the SAS and the commandos to come and rough up protesters? Maybe you're in the ADF right now. How do you feel seeing SOG used in this type of manner? Maybe you're in Victoria Police. How do you feel about it? I mean, nobody ever thought we'd see these types of scenes on the streets of Melbourne. And if you're not awake by now, then I don't know how to help you. If you still think that this is about everybody's safety, then I don't think there's anything I can possibly express on this show to help you to see things anything differently. What I've got here is I've got a video that was released in 2017 talking about Special Operations Group. It was from Channel 7, so it's pretty interesting to look at the description from 2017 in relation to what the group was intended for, and as a contrast to see what they're being used for today. So check this out.
Victoria Police's elite Special Operations Group is changing its tactics and training to deal with the increasing threat of terrorism on local soil. They're working behind the scenes with officers from overseas, and I was invited along to see firsthand what's being done to keep us safe. These men are part of the most elite unit within Victoria Police. They're the Special Operations Group, and we've never needed them more.
Community safety. It's everything. Community safety is foremost and first our consideration.
The SOG deal with the state's worst: gunmen, sieges and high-risk arrests. We last saw them when they ended the Brighton terror siege. They wear black and conceal their identity with masks, and are involved in hundreds of arrests every year.
We've positioned the capabilities for the Special Operations Group to meet any threat that may come along.
The biggest current threat to Melbourne is terrorism. It could happen at any time, in any form, and it's their job to be ready.
Over the last few years, we've seen a number of counter-terrorism incidents. The motivation is different, the options that we might exercise and some of the tactics are obviously different as well.
To stay ahead of the game that's always changing means consistent training. Peak physical fitness is just part of what you need to survive in this crack unit. Mental toughness separates these men from the rest. Recruits are trained for every scenario imaginable and pushed to breaking point time and time again. What kind of person do you need to be part of this group?
You've got to be resilient, definitely. You've got to be strong mentally and physically. And you've got to be the type of person that just won't give up ever.
Life and death decisions are made on the spot under incredible pressure. The men you see here are the best of the best, hand-picked from within the force and from specialist military units. They have to be prepared for any situation, and their number one priority is our safety. The SOG is currently training recruits in its 39th intake. Potentials are whittled down from 40 to less than 10.
Always wanted to be at the highest level of anything I try and do. Sports, work, so this is the highest level for the Victorian Police, so you always aim high.
The squad is expanding, with 20 new officers and extra firepower ready to roll out in the coming months.
We are the one and only last resort. Beyond us, there is no one else.
All right, so ladies and gentlemen, there you go. What do you think? A few years back, that was the narrative that terrorism was posing the greatest internal threat to our existence, and the question I have in my mind is that if protesters or people who are opposing the government by hosting peaceful protests, if they're reclassified as terrorists, then on paper, SOG would be serving their purpose by dealing with those people. So what do you think, ladies and gentlemen? What do you think about the weaponry and the capabilities? And go ahead and put your thoughts in the comments. But I think that it's very, very possible that for many years now, many of us Aussies have completely had the wool pulled over our eyes and really had no idea what was really going on. What do you reckon? Now, I've got what I've got next is a report from Rebel News featuring Avi. Avi covered a specific vehicle, a military-esque vehicle that was deployed to the streets of Melbourne just yesterday. A terrific report. I'm going to play that for you right now.
A warning. The video you're about to watch is confronting, but the world needs to see it. So please, watch it and share it with everyone you know. Then head over to yaminireport.com and sign up so I can send you the rest of what's really happening on our streets right now in Melbourne, Australia. As thousands of unarmed, mostly construction workers, marched Melbourne streets in protest of the world's longest and harshest lockdown, they suddenly found themselves confronted by an armoured vehicle operated by a counter-terrorism squad backed by hundreds of riot police. Live now in Melbourne, this is what's happening. This is for our health in Melbourne, live now. They've separated the groups, firing tear gas. It just suddenly kicked off. There are hundreds of riot police now. The crowd is separated. Half have gone that way, the other half in there. Yep. Come out of the way. And we've just seen what has unfolded here, where riot police in an armoured vehicle that they have not deployed till now in protest. In fact, I've covered protests here for years and haven't seen that. That was meant to be counter-terrorism, I believe. And now they are marching towards the crowd again to engage them, unprovoked. There was zero violence from protesters. Let's make that clear. There was no violence from protesters.
Five people arresting one man. Wow. No way. Amazing. Don't breathe. Don't breathe. You can't breathe. You can't breathe.
This is one of many construction workers injured by the unprovoked police violence on Melbourne Street. He'd been shot in that counter-terror police assault we just witnessed with this rubber bullet. His head is bleeding, and the man is clearly struggling to breathe from the tear gas and violent arrest.
Tell us where it is. I'll go there. Are they over there? Oh, no. I want to just I will get arrested. It's cheaper than freedom, believe me. If I get arrested, if I get a fine, it could be... Okay.
Right. He told you to go that way and you said, is that where the protesters are?
Yeah. I watch it. So.
You're what we call in Australia a smart ass.
Ah, really?
Are you Israeli by any chance?
We are. Yes.
That explains a lot.
Him speak to a microphone. He was in the crowd saying they're going down here, and then we saw him jump in there. So he was undercover, acting like he was in the crowd, and then he jumped in there. So
they did promise they're going to use new tactics today. I think this counter-terrorism vehicle is one of those tactics, and undercover officers.
Turn around and go down there.
Where's it? Yeah, hold on.
I'm not saying you're not alright. I'm just asking you to move back.
Well, doesn't that just make you feel so safe, knowing that our tax dollars spent on beefing up Victoria's counter-terror capabilities has now been turned on the exact people they were designed to protect? But much more happened yesterday, so make sure to give me your details at yaminireport.com so I can send you the rest of the story that you won't see in the mainstream media.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, I've got a couple of questions for you at home, a couple of things for you to think about. Now, I've got an interview with Avi that I conducted a little bit earlier today. It goes for about 7 minutes. I'm going to play that for you in a few minutes because I want to ask you something first, and that is, is this constitutional? Now, I don't know. I'm not a constitutional expert or anything like that. We are going to have a constitutional scholar on the show. Who here knows somebody called Professor Augusto Zimmerman? Well, I've got an interview scheduled with him for tomorrow, so I'm going to be posing the question to him. So why am I asking this? And what do I actually mean? So when I look at Special Operations Group, I see a group that I would describe as military-esque, militarized. I look at their tactical equipment and I don't see really any difference between their appearance, their tactics, when looking at some militaries from around the world. So I'm going to show you what I'm getting at here. So let me just open up my browser. What we have here is sorry, I don't think that's quite working right now. Okay, here we go. What we have here is Section 51 of the Constitution of Australia in relation to the Australian states. So it says here, quote, "A state shall not, without the consent of the Parliament of the Commonwealth, raise or maintain any naval or military force, or impose any tax on property of any kind belonging to the Commonwealth. Okay, nor shall the Commonwealth impose any tax on property of any kind belonging to the state." Okay, so what we're looking at here is shall not raise a military force. So my question to you at home is, when does a police force become a military force? Let me ask you that question. Is a military defined by the term military, or is military defined by the nature of the group conducting operations in their capacity to do so? So let's see, what do we have here? We've got Wikipedia. Military says here, military, also, this is the definition, also known collectively as armed forces, is a heavily armed, heavily organized force. Okay, so heavily armed and heavily organized. I would say that Special Operations Group fits that description. What do you think? Put that in the comments. And it says here that a military is primarily intended for warfare. Okay, well, we didn't think that any sort of unit of Victoria Police would be intended for warfare, but I argue there's a very clear case for the government engaging in a certain type of warfare against the people. Tell me if you think that I'm getting off track here. It says here it is typically officially authorized and maintained by a sovereign state, with its members identifiable by their distinct military uniform. Okay, so I'd say that Special Operations Group have a very military-esque uniform. They even have a camo version of their uniform. So my question to you is this indeed unconstitutional? I don't have the answer to that, but where's the line? At what stage can a police force be reclassified as a military force? I'm going to be asking Augusto tomorrow, and I'll let you know what I find. Do you have your own thoughts? Put your thoughts in the comments. All right, rightio. So moving along here, ladies and gentlemen, to wrap it up, I conducted an interview with Avi today from Rebel News. He's been doing a really good job covering the protests, the protests starting from Monday that have transpired throughout the week. It goes for about 8 minutes or so. We talk about some of the slander. We saw some very defamatory remarks made by the union referring to the protesters as neo-Nazis and extremists. We have a chat about that, and we also had a chat about Special Operations Group. So let me play that for you right now. All right, we have none other than Avi here with us. So Avi, welcome back to MCJ Report, and let's just get stuck straight into it. Now, you've been on the ground for the past few days now covering these protests that were spearheaded by the construction workers. The first thing I want to ask you is we've seen a lot of talk in the mainstream media that supposedly the crowd is largely comprised of neo-Nazis and far-right extremists. You've been on the ground, you've spoken to a lot of people. Talk to us about the type of people that you've met.
It's absolute rubbish. You know, the first day, especially when it was outside the CFMEU headquarters, I'll tell you now, 99% of them were CFMEU union members. And it was weird because I know I went there thinking, I don't even know, I didn't even bring security because I thought, you remember the unions, it's one of those things I've always been told, you wouldn't dare go to a union protest. And I always thought, it's going to be a bit hairy. And I thought, even if I have Daniel there as security,
if the crowd turn on me, I'm pretty much gone anyways. So it might as well just be one of us, not both of us. But it turned out we got there, and whilst maybe we don't share politics on all matters, but certainly when it comes to what's happening at the moment, we do. Although having said that, I'm starting to believe that the union reps and the organisation itself doesn't actually represent the people, and so a lot of the virtue signaling we've seen over the years they don't even know anything about it. They're just everyday hardworking Aussies that are living, a lot of them, from paycheck to paycheck.
Right. So what you're saying is you didn't see any Nazi flags or right-wing extremist symbology or anything like that?
Not at all. And I think because what happened, they were waiting outside for John Sextor to come down and to face him. And, the reps kept coming down, the delegates, and trying to talk him, into calming down. We're working it out. He's going to come and talk to you. We're going to figure this out. We're all family. That was the language they were using. And then suddenly at about, 3:45, which is already after the deadline, the news hits the crowd that John Sextor's on the radio talking to whoever's filling in for Tom Elliott. I forgot her name. And he's basically calling them all far-right extremists, anti-vaxxers, this and that. And the crowd just lost it. And they felt like he's doing exactly what he always does, and he's betraying the people that he's supposed to support and defend. And that's what they're about, is defending the rights of the labor workers, fighting for their rights, which is exactly what they're saying they want the unions to do. And some of them told me that a couple of months ago, when they spoke to him about what would potentially happen, he dismissed it as in saying, well, it's never going to happen. So it's a non-issue. And obviously the unions have, changed their stance from, Sextor and Sally McManus, who, let's be real, when they talk about far-right extremists have taken over and are the ones causing the problem, they were all but talking about me. That's what they were blaming, was me for the fact that I was covering it. I got there after it started. How I started that makes no sense, but it's rubbish, and it only added fuel to the fire and infuriated a lot of those members. And let's be fair, there's also some reps from the actual unions that didn't want to go on camera, but in the protests over the last couple of days, I've seen them on the ground because other union members have gone, oh, they're actually reps. You should go talk to them. And I went to talk to them, and I said, look, I'm not going to, I could see their faces were covered and all that. I go, I'm not going to put you on unless you're happy to go on camera. And they're like, no, we love what you do. We totally support the members and that. But obviously, we don't want to be on camera.
Fair enough.
Yeah,
fair enough. So
not
I think
Nazis.
that it's been an absolute, just disparaging remarks made, maybe an attempt to undermine the character of people there. We know the government and a lot of other bodies don't like the protesters. But moving along here, Avi, what we've also seen sort of progressively rolled out over the past few days has been more advanced police units. And you did an exclusive on it before to describe what you described as counter-terrorism units and members of Victoria Police. Would you mind talking to us a little bit about that, and what, if anything, has surprised you about the use of these particular police assets?
Well, they weren't designed for that. When we as taxpayers were happy to help fund a counter-terrorism unit, specialists to deal with the threat of terror, I, for certain as a taxpayer, never thought that would be deployed against civilians protesting for freedom. So that is a misuse of taxpayer dollars and resources, police resources that we funded for a specific purpose. And that's what I've learned from this whole thing, is it's really dangerous when you give government power and capabilities. It has to come with a qualifier that it cannot be misused like this. I was covering the rally, and there was probably at that point there was probably 2,000 marching through the city.
Yeah, and that was yesterday, correct?
That was yesterday, so it's the third day of the protests, and out of nowhere came the the what's it called, the thing, a vehicle with the special operations jumping out of it, and they came in literally guns blazing, not a word, just you can see in the footage they throwing tear gas and pop, firing rubber bullets at anyone.
Where do you think this is all heading?
Or
where do you see it all going?
I think Dan Andrews, you know, he messed with the wrong industry. I think the freedom movement will kind of at this point where I think some I could see seemed like they were disheartened and giving up, and maybe they weren't complying on a personal level, but they weren't coming out in force, because the last few protests they've been really knocked down a little bit. But I think this has re-inspired that base. I can see they're back to where they were throughout the beginning of this year, and suddenly they have a whole army with them.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
Young, angry men.
Yeah, well, I mean, a lot of people are angry, especially, of course, about the mandates, which is their every right. Now, Avi, I'm hearing some chatter, some rumours on the internet that supposedly more industries are going to be joining the construction workers. So what we saw today was actually not many protesters in the city, only very few, but there's chatters in relation to the weekend. Do you have any predictions for what you think might happen over the weekend?
I did think Saturday, I did think today would get a bit quieter after watching the last few days and just in my experience. I'm predicting Saturday is going to be a big protest in the city. Not sure, but Rebel News will be there on the ground as always.
As you always are, my friend Avi. You're doing a tremendous job. Thank you for covering the events here in Melbourne. So many people are counting on you to tell the side of the story, otherwise left untold by the mainstream media. You're doing an awesome job. Thanks for being on MCJ Report, and we hope to have you back soon.
Thanks for having me, mate, and congratulations.
Thank you very much, brother. I'll catch you. All right, so a big thank you to Avi from Rebel News. If you're not following Avi, make sure you go and follow him on one of the many platforms that he's on at rebelnews.com or yominireport.com.au. So make sure that you stay up to date. He's doing some tremendous work. All right, so we're going to wrap this segment of the show up. Just a few final thoughts that I have for you at home, and that is... the question I have is SOG by characterization, could they be defined as a military? And if so, is deploying SOG to the streets lawful? Is it constitutional? These are some questions that I have, some very, very serious concerns that I have, and I'll be seeking to have these questions answered.